Welcome to Tips, the Townsend Institute podcast series, a show produced by the Townsend Institute at Concordia University Irvine. This podcast shares stories of leadership, coaching, and counseling experiences that have shaped the lives and careers of our guests, who then provide tips aimed toward helping listeners grow in both their personal and professional lives. I'm Dr. John Townsend, psychologist, organizational consultant, and author of over 30 books, including the New York Times best-selling Boundaries series. I'm also the founder of the Townsend Institute, and I'm excited to introduce your podcast hosts, Dr. Ashlie Andrew and Dr. Gilbert Fugit.
Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. Today, we sit down with Bil Hood, someone who wears many hats in our Townsend and Concordia communities. Bil currently serves as the Senior Director of External Relations here at Concordia University Irvine. He directs the always incredible A Concordia Christmas specials, which can now be seen on over 420 PBS stations nationwide. And another fact we're particularly fond of is Bil is an alumni of our Townsend Organizational Leadership Program.
That's right. He is, Ashlie. But that's not all. Bil is also an author, and today's conversation centers on his latest work, The Genesis of Creativity. His work blends pastoral insight, creative direction, and strategic leadership to help people and organizations rediscover purpose and possibility. Our conversations with Bil are always inspiring. So let's get started. Well, welcome back, Tips listeners. We are in for a treat for today. We have our alumni and Concordia employee, Reverend Bil Hood. He is going to tell us, he's done a lot of work, and we've already kind of chatted a little bit here, but Ashlie and I are very excited to have him here today. And so can you just tell us a little bit about your background, on your journey, what in the world you're doing today, Bil?
Well, sure. When it comes to journey, I would maybe say that my journey has always lived at the intersection of leadership, faith, and storytelling. So as you said, I'm an alum of the Townsend Institute's Organizational Leadership Program. I currently serve at Concordia University Irvine, where my work focuses on external relations. And over the years, my experiences have spanned ministry, higher education, corporate event management, media production. I've produced national television broadcasts. I have led stadium-sized events. I've worked with some of the largest companies in the world. And I also now here at Concordia, I serve in advancement, external relations, and in a pastoral ministry. And maybe when I run them down like that on paper, it sounds like a lot of different lanes. But experientially, I've been on this constant question that I focus on is really how do people actually bring something meaningful into the world? And maybe over that time, I think what I noticed, regardless of the context, was that people don't lack ideas or passion. I found that more often than not, they struggled with the process. That they felt stuck maybe at the starting line or frustrated in the middle or even unsure if it was time to release what they'd made. And so today my work is focusing on really helping people recover confidence in that process. And so in addition to everything I just said, I also write and consult and speak around formation, leadership, and creativity. So helping individuals and organizations move forward faithfully rather than perfectly.
I like the way you say that, faithfully, not perfectly, right? Because I think so many people, they're waiting for it to be perfect, whether it's the perfect time, the perfect project, the perfect topic, right? They're just waiting for perfect. And you probably get stuck a little bit there, right? Because, perfect's never going to come.
Yeah. Perfect is not achievable. Faithful is.
Yes.
Excellent is a goal, but perfect is not achievable.
I love that. And that has to then be some of the impetus then for the new book that you wrote that really tackles, I'm sure, a lot of those questions that you were just asking. You recently wrote The Genesis of Creativity. So talk us a little bit about how you went about writing this book, and maybe if there were maybe one or two kind of instances that thought, hey, I got to put this on paper and get this in people's hands.
Sure. Well, the idea of the book really came out of what I kept seeing underneath all of these different contexts that I was working in. It was a time where I was returning to Genesis chapter 1. I was really going back and reading it over and over again, and not as a science text, but as a story. And what I began to notice in there is that there was a rhythm to how God creates. That God doesn't rush, he hovers. He names and he separates, and he works within boundaries, and he connects things together, and he invests and he persists, and then at the right moment he lets it live. And so this framework really resonated with my time at the Townsend Institute. And actually the chapter in the book that focuses on boundaries and creativity is directly inspired by Dr. Clouden Townsend's book, Boundaries. It was also the focus of my capstone project while I was in the Institute.
I love that
chapter.
We love to hear that.
Yes. So this is good for our listeners to know. Your capstone can become a book and all these things, right? And so,
oh yeah. I was telling the rest of my cohort as we were processing through this that I think this is my capstone, but I think there's a lot more to it. I think this can become something bigger, and it can become a book. So, that work that I did there, it helped me see that boundaries don't restrict creativity, they make it possible. And so that kind of was the cornerstone of everything else that came out of it. Looking at boundaries in Genesis and really poring over Genesis, I realized there was even more to the process than just dividing day and night, land and sea, the sky above and the things below. The boundary work that was done over the first 3 days of creation, there was a lot more to it. And so that's where the book really grew out of.
Yeah, you did a good job diving into it and making it very user friendly. And I love the questions at the end that you kind of had for all of them. One of them I saw was in this hovering part, you said, where do you need to hover before moving forward? I was thinking, that's a great question. How can you help our listeners to think about that? What do you mean by that? Where do we need to hover before moving forward?
Well, here's the thing. If you're going to read through the Bible and you start at chapter 1, verse 1, this is how it opens. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. That's the launching pad for the entire Bible. Before anything was created, the Spirit of God is hovering over chaos. Nothing at that time is fixed. Nothing is named. And God doesn't rush to solve the problem. He just stays present with it. And maybe for us, hovering it's the discipline of not moving too quickly to action. It's that space where we observe and we listen and we tell the truth about what actually is. And maybe most often we try and skip that part because what we want is clarity and solutions and momentum. But in creativity and in leadership and formation, all of those things suffer when we move too quickly without hovering.
Right.
So when we ask that question, where do you need to hover before moving forward? What we're really asking is, are you trying to fix or decide too quickly? Where might God be inviting you to slow down,
right,
and pay attention? Name what's actually happening before you even act.
Can you provide some examples then too I think what's so unique about you, Bill, is obviously working in church work now, you mentioned, but that this has actually really only been your vocational calling for the last decade or so, is you have so much work with large organizations in secular places. And so you see this playing out really across the spectrum. So maybe a little bit of story time here of maybe, someone that you work and consulted with, or maybe it was a student or a parishioner, of how they really put this to use, this whole idea of kind of hovering or that creative process, how it worked out for those that are in faith-based institutions and organizations, and maybe those that aren't.
Sure. A really good example that's a little more recent for me actually comes from my time here at Concordia, that we see this whole process of hovering and identifying boundaries and making connections and investing yourself and letting things live was something that happened here at Christmas time about 6 years ago at Concordia. It was COVID and everything had shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And through conversations that I had with colleagues and partners and folks in the community, I had learned that PBS was facing a real challenge. They didn't have enough Christmas content that year because so many productions had been canceled because of the pandemic. And at the same time, Concordia had just opened a new music building with a recording studio that allowed us to work safely.
Yes.
We had a high quality recording from the previous Christmas concert that we did at Segerstrom Concert Hall. And recently, I had come in contact and met a new donor and friend of Concordia whose philanthropic passions kind of sat right at the intersection of PBS and music and faith. And so instead of rushing into Christmas with what are we going to do? It's COVID. Maybe we just go online with our concert like always. We spent a little time hovering. Understanding what were the resources at hand.
Right.
What were the constraints that we were now facing? What were the opportunities that were in front of us? And also at that time, the boundaries mattered. They mattered a lot because we had very clear limits when it came to safety protocols, our budget, our timelines, and getting into partnership with PBS. Now there were broadcast standards, and there was this outside influence about what can you say and sing and do. But those boundaries didn't shut us down. What they did was they clarified for us what was possible. And so from there, we made the connections. We brought together PBS, this donor, past performances, new facilities, our mission as a university, and everyone who was involved with it. Faculty, students, production teams, partners invested in it deeply.
Yes.
This took an immense amount of energy in a very short amount of time. It took long hours, and it took adaptability, and it took a lot of trust. And so we pushed through to the finish and we released it. And originally what the goal was is PBS said, if you make one for us, we'll put it on the air. And so our thought was, okay, they're probably going to put us on at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, but at least we made an hour-long Christmas.
Right. Not quite prime time, right?
Yeah.
And it got on TV.
Yeah.
But when you fast forward 6 years later, the show we air every Christmas in Southern California, the following year has gone national.
Yes.
And over 6 years now, we have been airing on almost every PBS station in the country. And we have close to 3,000 hours of airtime that has come out of that.
Amazing.
So, maybe that's a good example of what meaningful change can look like. It's not about this one big idea. It's about paying attention, having conversations with people that maybe weren't necessarily connected with what our Christmas program was, but then identifying those new opportunities and then working within the limits, bringing the right people together, trusting the process and putting it out in the world.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. And as someone who has been a loyal viewer and listener of those PBS specials over the year, they really are something special, really a work of art, a creative work of art, I guess maybe we should say. But I was taking some notes as you talked about that. And I think for our listeners, again, no matter what genre of vocation you're in, some of these things you just mentioned, Bill, right? You talk about recognizing the constraints, looking for the opportunities, knowing your limits. That boundaries do not have to be necessarily a constraining thing, but you said it helps clarify what's possible, and all that with some adaptability and trust. I mean, these are all skills traits, strategies that transfer over to anything you do and any role that you're in. These are key. That was wonderful.
Absolutely. I would even add to that, if we're looking at Genesis chapter 1, which is what the book is based off of as kind of the launching point of creativity,
Yeah.
the investment that happens in that first chapter is that God, in plural, says we are going to create this new piece in our image. And if we, no matter who we are created in the image of God, and the first thing we learn about that God is that in the beginning, God created.
Right.
No matter who you are, that image of God as a creator is a part of who you are and can be lived out wherever you are, whether it's in the home, in the school, in your neighborhood, in your work. I think that to me was a big key to this.
And when you talk about hovering, and I'm sure you experience this with the PBS, it sometimes can be frustrating, right? You're wanting to move forward. I mean, probably when you got that list of production demands by PBS, you're, oh, okay, this is more than we typically do. I mean, we just went through this at the Townsend Institute. We're launching a new PhD program in executive coaching and leadership, and what we first thought of is very different now than what just was approved. And it was a great process. It actually helped it, I think, become a stronger program. Will be a great one. But I'm just thinking about that hovering time where I would really want to get it going. I wanted to start yesterday. So I like that. So can you talk about maybe, because you've done a lot of research here about creativity, and in your book, I hope folks go and grab it. It's available on the amazon.com, so not but amazon.com. So, and probably a lot of other places. I mean, you can probably stop by Bill's office and he's got a few copies. And if you're nice to him, he might even autograph it for you. So what have you maybe changed your mind about after doing all this research and work about creativity?
Maybe the biggest shift for me, and I've become a very vocal advocate of this, is this idea of getting rid of the outside the box thinking. For so long, we've been told that creativity means we have to think outside of a box, that we break down a box, that we throw the box away. But what I've learned through this work is that doing that more often than not will kill progress rather than fuel it. Because the reality is there is always a box. There are always financial limits. There are always time constraints. There are always personnel limits. There are always desired outcomes that we're trying to move toward. There's always foundational missional commitments that things are built off of. And when we pretend that those don't exist, we don't become more creative. What we do is we invite paralysis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe a good way to think about this is think about it like going out to dinner and maybe the Cheesecake Factory problem.
Yes.
Oh boy. Yeah. The 40-page menu.
Oh my goodness. Advertisements in it.
And you don't know do you want burgers or ribs or sushi or pasta or pizza or salads? And the list goes on. And you spend half of your evening just kind of frozen, not knowing where to start. And when the night is over, you might leave full, but you're not really energized.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, if you compare that to going to a Michelin star restaurant, there you get a piece of paper with 3 options. You choose quickly, you trust the chef, and in the end, you leave satisfied and energized and not overwhelmed. And I think that's an example of what boundaries can do for creativity. They reduce this idea of the tyranny of choice. They help focus your attention, and then they help create momentum. So I've stopped telling people to think outside the box. Instead, I encourage them to really hover to identify exactly what are those boundaries, what are the real box boundaries, and then create faithfully within inside of those boundaries. That's where the real movement's going to happen.
I know one of the other chapters of your book, this is what really struck a chord with me, is you talk about the hardest part of creating is releasing your work to the world.
Mm,
Right. And I
yeah.
think maybe I'm speaking on behalf of Gilbert and I, but also probably some of our listeners out there, they have really great ideas. And maybe they've done the work. They've created the piece, they've written the book, drew this, created that, what have you, but they just have a grip hold on it, right? A stronghold where they're scared, they're fearful, just we're doubting, is this the right time? What advice do you give to those, students or friends that are maybe at that final stage, but they're just not ready to release it yet? What do you say to them?
Well, that's the one spot for me that I wrestled with the most with this book, because
Mm,
I could have kept polishing and editing and nudging words forever
Yeah.
if I was chasing what I think is perfect. But instead of being hung up on, did I catch every typo, every double space that might have happened,
Mm-hmm.
I had to get convince myself finally, have I been faithful? Is the work excellent? Maybe it's time to let it go. Because if I don't, it's not going to have the impact that I intended from the beginning if I just hold on to it. So that was something I had to come to grips with in this process was it's gone. It's gone out there. It's in the
Yeah.
world.
There you go.
I think maybe the other thing to keep in mind is when we dial it back to Genesis again, that's where we got to at the end of this story of creation is that
Right.
God said, man and woman, you're in charge now.
Mm-hmm.
Take care of this, own it, build it up, live within it, be my image bearers. And we know how that happened because just 2 chapters later, they're kicked out of the Garden of Eden.
Right.
Sin has
Yes.
entered the world.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, if your fear is that it's going to fall apart, don't fear that because that's our Genesis example.
Mm-hmm.
What we end up seeing then is a continuous cycle throughout Scripture of God bringing order,
Mm-hmm.
disorder coming in, and then God bringing reorder to that. And
mm,
so that's the thought I have when it comes to creativity. It's in my mind, probably these things are never done. If
Yeah.
I come
Right.
back to this book in 10 years,
Yep.
I'm going to have a different viewpoint. I could reorder this. I
Yes.
could learn from what's happened in the 10 years prior. I could see that there were errors that need correction. And so I want to live in this cycle of order, disorder, and reorder, that I will
Yes.
come back to it, that I, you know, it, George Lucas did it with Star Wars. He got to the point where he had to let it go. The technology wasn't where he wanted it to be,
yeah.
but here's the movie. And then
Mm,
over time, he was able to go back and do things he couldn't do before.
There you go. John and Henry did it with boundaries. There
that's
wasn't just
right.
Yeah,
one. There's been a whole series since then. So.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think we've heard it here first is there might be a second edition to this book, you know? There might be a revised one here in a few years. So that's
There
kind
could
of
be a
big.
revised one.
Yeah.
There also may be a follow-up called The Exodus of Change.
Oh, you heard it here first, everyone. I love that. This is really good, Bill. And we're always constantly relooking at our curriculum, especially from the org leadership standpoint. So, love to change up our books from time to time,
Hmm.
some that are required, some that are recommended. And so, I was looking at this obviously after reading it in preparation for our talk here today. Where can we fit this into our org leadership curriculum? And is it best going earlier on, or I would love to maybe make this a required text in our capstone class. How cool would that be?
Oh,
To give students a chance to say, look, this actually started as
yes.
kind of a capstone idea and project of a student here, and look what it can become. And maybe for them, theirs isn't going to become a book, but maybe it becomes
Right.
an area that they can go on and
Uh-huh.
speak and consult on, or maybe it becomes a podcast episode, or who knows. But just that idea that the work that they do now, right? If you hover and spend the right amount of time with it, who knows what can come of it?
Yeah, I just a tag for you on that. The hovering, we don't know
Yeah.
how long that took in Genesis. That could have been eons of hovering
Right.
that happened
Yeah.
before creation started. But we also know that the boundary work took half of God's creative week. Days 1, 2, and 3 were separating, identifying, and structuring before any work came to fill. So the hovering and the boundaries are so key, and we rush past both of them to try and get to work.
I know you worked a lot. We talked about creativity, and it comes in a lot of different ways. One person I think you've had a big impact in the world as far as creativity and maybe their career growth was Kyrie Irving. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe how you've impacted him and the trajectory he's been on in life?
Sure, it's a unique one for me. When people meet me, they wouldn't assume I have a connection there, but my uncle, who is a Lutheran pastor, my mom's brother, when he and his wife were living in South Dakota, adopted 2 children. One of those cousins of mine, Liz, married Dedrick Irving, and Dedrick and Liz had Kyrie as one of their 2 kids. So as Kyrie grew up, I spent summers with him all the time. He was named after the Kyrie from the Lutheran hymnal because of his Lutheran grandfather.
Wow.
And
Wow.
yeah, I would like to say that a lot of his success in basketball is due to the fact that my brother and I would shove him into the fences in my parents' yard when we'd play basketball in Seattle late into the night. We taught him persistence. We taught him to follow through. We taught him his crossover. So
That's what I was hoping you would say. You taught him the crossover. I can't wait for
That
Kyrie
is
to
impressive.
respond on it. Yeah.
That might be its own book too one day. You just
Yeah, that's right.
never
Yeah.
quite know how that's
How
gonna
I
go.
shoved Kyrie into the fence. Yeah, that was.
yep,
Oh my gosh. Well,
almost ended his career before it started.
we know that your work is not done here. You continue to influence and motivate, whether it's the students that are coming into your office there at Concordia University Irvine, obviously the parishioners that have the privilege of learning from you maybe Sunday at a pulpit, and those readers, of course, that are going to read this awesome book. Tell us a little bit more about where our listeners can find out more about you and all those different areas of creation that you're a part of.
Okay, well, one place you can go is to bilhood.com, and it's Bill with 1 L. The story there is I used to be Billy. My grandfather was my pastor in the Bill, but a university professor refused to call a grown man Billy. So in response, I dropped the second syllable of Lee and kept the Bill, the BIL. So it's bilhood.com.
That's hilarious. That's really the story. So you've only
That's
been
how-
BIL for kind of your adult life.
Yep.
Oh, that's funny. That's good. I like
Yep.
that.
Oh. So if we call you Billy, you might answer or no?
Oh, I still have to. Yeah, I have aunts and parents and others who are calling me Billy all the time.
All right.
But with
Good
2
to know.
L's.
2 L's. Yeah.
This is good. I like it. I like it.
So yeah, head over there. You can be able to find out about my writing and my speaking and my consulting work, more about Genesis of Creativity. Like Gilbert said, you can find it on Amazon. It's in print and in Kindle. The audiobook is coming soon. I'm always grateful when conversations like this turn into a dialogue that's ongoing. So people are welcome to reach out to me through the site as well.
That would be great. Well, so we end all of our episodes, right, with a takeaway tip. We've talked about so much today, creativity, so many different facets. What would be something you would like a tip for everyone to walk away with today, Bill?
Well, I would go back to square one in that Genesis 1, verse 1. Don't rush to create. Hover. Hover long enough to see what's really there. And then work faithfully within your boundaries and trust that the clarity is going to come.
Love
I
that.
like that. Yeah,
Wonderful
don't rush.
message. Don't rush. I like that. Well, thank you so much, Bill, for your time today and for this excellent work you continue to do. And we always love hearing from our colleagues and our friends and our Institute alumni. That's just the extra icing on the cake. So thanks, Bill.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Bill, for being with us.
If you enjoy the Townsend Institute podcast series, head to our website at cui.edu/Townsend to find out more about the certificates, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees offered through Concordia University Irvine. With programs in mental health counseling, executive coaching and consulting, and organizational leadership, we have a variety of faith-based programs dedicated to helping you fulfill your academic and professional goals, all the while furthering your competence, character, and connection. Again, that's cui.edu/Townsend.